WWE 12 completely changed WWE games. It looked different, it played different, it had a different name. I'm wondering how they came up with that. It started a brand new series, but it wasn't necessarily better than SmackDown Vs RAW 2011. This game is a god's work. It's absolutely shocking to me how they had both Triple H and Sheamus in Road to WrestleMania, but it was Sheamus who won every title. Like, come on, you're spitting on a shovel, it's a meme. And WWE 12 is a video game that started the trend of every WWE game looking very similar, and this eventually backfired. You just gotta love how in WWE 2K20 they changed the controls because the game looked too identical. Well, at least it had some hot ass characters. So in today's wrestling game time, we're gonna take a look at WWE 12. WWE 12 is a wrestling game, in case you thought it's about cars. No, we did actually have a wrestling game with cars. It was released in November of 2011 on Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and Wii. It was the first WWE game that was not released on PlayStation 2, and probably for the better. I mean, it looked like dog shit. It had Randy Orton on a cover. He was sporting his bald look, even though during that time he already grown a beard and hair, so that was kinda weird. But fortunately, you had two different versions of Randy Orton in the game. I think the cover looks just fine. I'm a big fan of Randy Orton. However, I don't appreciate the fact that this game basically started the trend of every WWE cover looking basically the same. In my opinion, it's a bit too generic. I mean, it's a video game. Smack some faces on it. Let's talk about WWE 12's graphics. I feel like for the most part, it looked actually very good, especially in close-up looks. The skin looks great, the lighting looks decent, the faces look realistic enough, surprisingly better than some actual scanned faces in the new games. But you just gotta admit, people, sweat really helps in video games. That's the reason why in every video game commercial, especially sports, you always have sweat. Whereas faces just look more realistic. So I still appreciate WWE SmackDown vs RAW 2011's graphics more. And whenever I look at WWE SmackDown vs RAW 11, I'm always surprised by how great it still looks. In some aspects, it looks better than the new games. But not to take anything away from WWE 12, it looked different. One thing that I didn't like about the graphics or the look of the game is that they tried to make it look way too similar to WWE television, but they kinda failed. For example, I really cannot stand the camera angles. Like, it looks absolutely horrendous, it's very low, the superstars are way too far so you can't see the good graphics. For me, it's just uncomfortable to look at. They nailed the realism in the gameplay, but when it comes to actual look, I feel like they failed. It's still a video game, you don't need realism in unnecessary areas of the game. I mean, it's 2020 and we still don't have that, but you should be able to switch camera angles. NBA has that for like, I don't know, 50 years. You can see how much the camera angles ruin the game because when you look at the cutscenes, you can see how better it actually looks, how good, how beautiful this game is. And I know this game looks good because it's not like in cutscenes you have different graphics. But as good as these graphics look, like I've said, I still actually appreciate Little Honey Brawl. The gameplay of WWE 12 was better. It pretty much had a new engine and you had more control over your character's decisions. One of the best things is that you can actually interrupt moves in like triple threat matches. If you know someone is attacked with an RKO, I punch him, well, he's no longer doing an RKO. And it was also great for tag team combos, 619 into a Swanton Bomb or whatever, you get the point. The gameplay was a lot better actually. But of course, it's WWE games, one step forward, two steps back because weapon physics got worse. Another great addition is a wake up taunt. Basically very useful, especially for superstars like Randy Orton. Like I've said, it was more WWE TV like, and when it comes to gameplay, I believe they did a great job. And after that, every year they kept adding stuff, and it was actually great. I mean, the gameplay kept getting better and better and better, but it's been about 8 years. I don't think it was enough, so it still feels very similar to the new games. Like I've said, it started the trend of every WWE game looking very similar. It's exactly what NBA, FIFA are doing. And that's a shame because I never looked at WWE games as sports games. Every game felt different. The roster was decent. I mean, we got new guys like Daniel Bryan, Del Rio, Sin Cara with a shitty ass lighting, Michael McGillicuddy, Heath Slater, Husky Harris, Batista's mama, and superstars that were previously DLC like Wade Barrett, David Otunga, and Justin Gabriel. We also got some superstars being updated that needed the most, most, for example CM Punk, and it still wasn't enough because his entrance wasn't updated, and during that time he was at the top of the wrestling world. But I believe for the most part the roster was just fine. We didn't get a lot of legends, but of course we got some main ones like Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock being DLC. Since people in this game look different, they focused on the main roster. I mean, it still had a good selection of superstars, but in case you're a hardcore fan and you only want to play as legends, when you can always lay the SmackDown with Vladimir Kozlov. In WWE 12 we got Road to WrestleMania mode for the last time maybe ever. Instead of different stories, this time we got one big story. In this one you'll play as Sheamus, Triple H, and Jacob Cass, your created superstar, which sounds really ass. When you play as Sheamus, you're a bad guy, you form a faction, which was actually one of the highlights, and you win every WWE championship, and you betray your friends, and basically you become the WWE champion. Triple H, you're a good guy. You're fighting for the WWE Championship against The Miz, mainly The Miz, who's kinda trying to run the WWE, but at the end of it you win the match. It was your retirement match, and it was one of the best cutscenes in WWE games I've ever seen. It's a good thing that WWE Championship got updated, so it didn't look like a toy anymore. Jacob Cass ass was decent. I loved it because WCW came back, Kevin Nash was running WWE, he brought back WCW Nitro, and you were fighting for the WWE, and the ending is actually pretty phenomenal. You got WWE versus WCW in a Hell in a Cell. It had a lot of great moments, so even though it's the least favorite Road to WrestleMania in many people's eyes, I still think it was very good. It was very long. What sucks is that they removed free roaming. It had so much potential. Yes, in SmackDown Vs RAW 11 it wasn't great, but it was still a lot of fun. So I don't know why they removed it instead of just improving it. We got WWE Universe for the second time, and this was possibly the best Universe mode ever, not in terms of customization, even though you got that for the first time. You can actually edit shows, but it wasn't very deep. You see, people, I don't care about customizing shows if I don't have fun with the game mode itself, and this one had a lot of cutscenes. I still think this menu was better, this layout of Universe mode was better. This whole start a show and then you cannot edit and stuff is just bad in my opinion. And this game mode had a very good way to get you into it. You play as Randy Orton, Brock Lesnar returns, and you get this Randy Orton versus Brock Lesnar rivalry. So that was a lot of fun. Obviously you don't get that a lot, it's probably just a one-time thing, but at least they tried. And yes, Brock Lesnar was in WWE 12, even though back then he wasn't on television yet, so that was pretty big. Creation Suite was the same for the most part, except we got Create an Arena, which in my opinion was a very big disappointment. Instead of actually giving us this game mode in WWE 12, I wish they waited and gave us this in WWE 13 with actual stage customization, because in this one you cannot customize the stage. It always looks the same no matter what you create. Only the ring can be, well, customized. But I mean, it's better than nothing. Create a Superstar was basically the same, except I'm pretty sure you either created Chris Jericho or downloaded this exact version of Chris Jericho that looked absolutely phenomenal. Chris Jericho not being in the game was a big deal, because when this game got released, Chris Jericho came back and he was in the main event, so everyone wanted to play as Chris Jericho. It was such a shame that Jericho was not in this game, and I wish he was DLC. To conclude this video, I think it was still a very good video game when you compare it to other series starters like WWE 2K15 and WWE 2K20. For the most part, it wasn't broken, it had a lot of game modes, it had a decent roster, glitches didn't break the game. It was a well-made, working WWE video game, and the same thing cannot be said about WWE 2K15 and 2K20. Thank you for watching the video, The Great One. Peace, love, and hugs. It's been a pleasure.